To explain that there's an Oiskes in Heichaltzu. In Hebrew English, it's page 60. To explain that the difference between Kedusha and Klippa is that Klippa is defined by divisiveness and Kedusha is defined by unity. In other words, it's not only that Kedusha has a certain feature to it, which is unity, or Klippa has a certain feature to it, which is separation and division. But in a sense, division is what defines Klippa. And unity is what defines Kedusha. And the reason for that is, good morning, because the difference between Kedusha and Klippa is Bittul and Klippa is Yeshus. We actually had this very recently in Tanya, in Chitas, the daily Tanya. And the Alter Rebbe says that in more than one place in Tanya, that the definition of Kedusha is a place where Hashem's presence is found there in a revealed way. And we're not saying Hashem's presence is there. Hashem's presence is everywhere. There's no place in the world that's void of His presence. But where is He found in a revealed way? The only place He could be in a revealed way is where there is bittul, where that place, it does not feel itself, perceive itself separate from Hashem. It's part of Hashem. It's included in Hashem. That's where Hashem could be revealed. So therefore, being that the difference between Kedusha and Klippa is bittul or yesh. Yesh means something separate from Hashem, which doesn't allow Hashem to be revealed. And bittul, so therefore, we can definitely say the key difference between Kedusha and Klippa is Kedusha is bittul and Klippa is yesh. And now we're saying that the difference between divisiveness and unity is bittul and yesh, which is that Kedusha is always going to be achdus, unity, and Klippa is going to be yesh. Now he's going to something deeper, and that is that everything that's found in the world, the way we know it down here, has its source somewhere up there. Which means even when we talk about things that are, let's say we learn in the Chumash, we learn about Esav, we learn in the Chumash about Paro. So when you study Chassidus and you study Kabbalah, it explains that there's a source in the spiritual realm for Paro, and there's a source in the spiritual realm for Esav. What does that mean? Very simple. Where does Esav come from? And where does Paro come from? Being that Hashem is Hashem, Kedusha, godliness, where does anything that's not godly come from? What? Sitra. Right, and where does Sitra Achra come from? If godliness is pure godliness, where does Sitra Achra, where does it begin? Oh, so it's come somewhere from Hashem, but obviously in its original source, it's not Klippa, it's something Kedusha. But that's something of Kedusha, after evolving and evolving and evolving, it evolves into something which is Klippa. So here too, when we say that Klippa is Yesh and Kedusha is Bittul, where does that come from? So that's what he's going to explain now in Oiskes. Kol zeh hu b'sitra b'Kedusha. So again, we're on page 60. Everything we said before about unity, that's in Kedusha. Because there's bittul, which means it's not about me, I'm able to let go of self, and I'm able to connect to something which transcends self, and the other person can, and therefore the two people could unite. That's why there could be unity and there could be inclusion. But when you're there talking about Sitra Achra and Klippa, Shem B'Pchinas Pira L'Gamrei, of there the separateness Mitzada yesh shebahem, because of yeshus. Yeshus is separateness, because everyone is into themselves. So therefore, there's no real unity. Now, in this parentheses, he's going to explain the source, where this comes from. When you talk about the root of these two things, this is really the difference between spheres the tayu, the spheres the tikkun. So, assuming that this is something you're familiar with, because we had it in another Maimarim, or you learned it on your own somewhere, but we know that the source of everything in Kedusha comes from the world of Tikkun, which is the world of Atzilus. Everything that's in Klippa comes from the word of Tohu. And because of that, many people make the mistake and they associate Tohu with Klippa. But really, Tohu is not Klippa. Tohu is a world which is Kedusha. And not only Kedusha, Tohu is a world that's even higher than the world of Atzilus. So it's a world that's spiritually on a very high level. And nevertheless, that's the source that ultimately and eventually from there, Klippa evolves. So what happened in the world of Tohu? So the world of Tohu was this opinion of Spiris HaKelim, that the vessels broke. Now, when you look into Maimarim, try to understand what's the reason why they broke, what happened, what went on there, you'll find more than one reason. And it looks as if these reasons are all different reasons, one from the other. Once you get to understand the concept of the world of Tohu much deeper, you recognize that all the reasons are really connected, and each one complements the other. It's just looking at things from a different perspective. So up until now, when we spoke about the world of Tohu in a number of places, we explained it one way. Over here, he's going to explain it a different way. What did we explain up until now? That there were spheres in the world of Tohu, Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchus, 7 spheres. And there's also spheres in the world of Tikkun. But the difference is why in the world of Tohu did it all break? In the world of Tikkun it didn't break. The difference is because in the world of Tohu there was no unity, which means, and no inclusion, which means that Chesed was pure Chesed. And Gevura is pure Gevura. And because of that, Chesed was intense, pure intensity of Chesed. Gevura is pure intensity of Gevura, and therefore the two clashed. The way we can understand this is like people. Imagine two people, and they're supposed to be working together on something, whether these are two people that are married to each other, or two people that are running some sort of a organization together, or they're running a business together, or they're both teaching a class together. One of them is pure, intense chesed, and the other one is pure, intense gevura. They'll be constantly clashing. This one's going to say we must discipline, and we have to be strong, we have to put our foot down, and we have to be harsh. And this one's going to say, no, positive reinforcement, you have to be pleasant, you have to give rewards, you have to smile, and they just won't see eye to eye. And the only way that they could see eye to eye, if the person who is chesed is not pure chesed, they also have room in their head and in their heart to understand that there's also room for the approach of gevura. And the other person understands that there's also an approach for chesed. Yes, one of them, the chesed, is more dominating than the gevura. The other one, maybe the gevura is more dominating than the chesed. But they both could relate to both things. Then they can find a place where they can connect. But if a person would be pure gevura, they just cannot relate to anything chesed. And a person's pure, intense chesed cannot relate to anything gevura, there's no way that they're going to come together. They're going to clash. And that's what happened in the world of Tohu. Hashem created that world in a way that chesed was pure, intense chesed, and gevura is pure, intense gevura. So, and each one of the 7 was pulling sort of in a different direction. As a result of that, there was shviras hakelim, the breaking of the vessels. Here he's going to give a different reason. Let's start reading from the parentheses.
What was that? That was the reason for the people?
That's the reason why the why there was Shviras HaKelim.
Okay.
Okay, now once there was Shviras HaKelim, these Kelim, which is up there in the world of Torah, is still something spiritual. When the word Shvira means it broke, means it fell. So it evolved and it went through gazillion levels of tzimtzum until eventually from that evolved the Gashmis in this world and Klippa. But there's another thing that I need to remind you when we spoke about it last time, we explained it at length, but it's also relevant to this. Remember what we said, what Shvira Sakela means? That every Sphira consists of two parts. It's two components to every Sphira. One is Ur and the other is Keli. One is the light and the other is the vessel. One is the energy and the other is something which contains that energy. Which means just like physically, the Ur and the Keli of a physical person is the Ur is the neshama, that's the light, that's the energy, and the vessel is the physical guf. And the same with each one of the faculties. Let's say we have the power of intellect. The physical organ, which is the brain, which is physical, like anything else that's physical, that's called the keli, the vessel. The power of intellect that's contained in that organ, that's the or, that's the light. The heart is a physical organ, and that's the keli. The emotions, the feelings that one experiences in their heart, that's the or, that's the light. So when we say that there's a sphere called chesed, it also has two components. One is the light of chesed, and the other is the vessel. The only thing is, what does a vessel mean up there? There's no physical containers up there. So it means, no, the light is something which is not physical, the vessel is not physical, but still one is a vessel compared and versus to the other. Anyone remember how this was explained? That certain mashal we gave. Mashal of two things. One would be the energy, and the other one would be just a vessel that contains it. And nevertheless, both things are not physical, tangible. They're both in a more sort of abstract world. I gave two examples. One is simpler, one is a little bit deeper. The first example was speech. When a person speaks, words come out of our mouth. The words are either words of logic or they're words of emotion. So it also has two components. The emotion where the person is expressing, whether it's love or anger or fear, that is the energy. The word that I'm using to express it, that's the vessel. That's just vehicles of communication. How can I express what I feel to another person through words? In fact, the words can change. It can be Spanish, English, French, Russian. And no matter what language I speak, the energy is the same. So the vessel is something external. And the function of the vessel is just to hold, to contain, and in some way to define, to make things more defined, not so abstract. Because if I want to tell somebody how I feel and I say, they wouldn't understand what I'm talking about. So I have to use words. When you use words, you're defining things. In some ways, you're making it more limited. But on the other hand, that's the only way I can communicate to you what I'm feeling. Bravo. But then you can ask me, well, words are also physical. After all, it's sound. So where's there a better mashal of something which is not even as physical as sound, and it's still considered a vessel, has the same function as a vessel? So the other example that I gave you was thought. When a person is thinking, are we thinking with words or without words? Some people think of pictures. That's true. But they're also thinking in a language. It has to be their language. And especially people who speak more than one language will testify to that you think in a certain language. So in my head, I'm thinking about a certain feeling, thinking about something that had happened, how I feel about it, or I'm thinking about a certain concept, and I'm understanding it intellectually. There's also the two components. There's the actual logic, the intelligence, that's something which is, or that's the light. But the language that I'm using, that's just for me to be able to comprehend what I'm thinking. When people, if you ask someone, could you explain this? And they say no. Usually it's a sign that they're lacking understanding. Because when you can put a concept into words, that's when you can hold on to it. That's when it could be defined. That's when it's clear. If not, then it's like not defined, and it's more abstract, and that's why there's no clarity. So really, that's the function of a vessel. A vessel means it's not necessarily physical, but it's something that it contains and it defines and puts a sort of a form of some sort to the light that should not be so abstract or so unlimited. Okay, now that we did this, let's go to the next step. So in the world of Tohu, when we say there was Shviras HaKelim, the vessels broke, what does that mean? What happened? So what happened was that the light in that world was so intense and so overwhelming that the vessels could not contain it. As a result of that, the vessel broke. So again, the analogy to that would be like a person who chas v'shalom is experiencing, let's say, according to Rashi, this is what happened with Sarah Imenu. It says that how did she die? Just when Abram went to do the Akedah, because the angel came to tell her, you know, that your husband just went to take your son and sacrifice him. And when she heard this news, the shock was so great that she died. So a person, God forbid, this could happen. A person could faint from a shock, and even, God forbid, pass away from a shock. And by the way, shock could be positive, because there's another opinion that she was overwhelmed with joy to hear that her husband and her son are going to do this amazing thing that Hashem wants them to do. So shock could also be something positive, but it means the emotion that the person's experience is so overwhelming, so huge, that their body can't contain it, their heart, their mind can't contain it, and therefore, God forbid, it falls apart. And what happens when it falls apart? The neshama leaves the body. So this is what happened in the world of Tohu. Just to give you, just to make it a little bit more visual, and help us understand the next one. Again, we're talking about, these are the four worlds. Atzilus is the highest, then Bria, and then Yitzira, and then Asir. And all on top of the higher than all that, here is Tohu. And in this world, there are the vessels and the light. So again, just making a drawing. These are the vessels, as if to say, and this is the light that goes into the vessel. Shviras HaKelim? Yeah, let's not make it too. Let's not be careful. Okay, so once this broke, the light, just like the neshama, left the vessels. Where did it go? Went up here, back to the vessels, wherever it is that they came from. What happened to the vessel? It broke. It doesn't mean physically broke. It means it became lower and lower and lower and lower and lower. And this became the world. Here's where Klippa comes from. So now we're going to a second reason why did the vessels break? What happened? Which is different than the reason that I gave you. But on a deeper level, if you go more into it, you see how they're connected. What does he say? The reason why it broke, because spirits of Toya, are not emler, dafka, aniv le'yachet. The Zohar writes that each one of the spheres said, Ana emler, I will rule. I want to rule. V'gam minyan hamlucha, b'pchinas yeshes v'espashtus. So this is the reason we gave before, that each sphere wanted to be, each sphere felt my function is to generate chesed in the world. My function is to generate gevura in the world. And they only saw that exclusively So therefore, Chesed couldn't tolerate Gvura, and Gvura couldn't tolerate Chesed. זהו גם כן הסיבה, there's also the reason מה שהביטול שלהם הוא בבחינת רוצוי לבד, ולא בבחינת שוב. These two words that you're seeing here, Rotzui and Shuv, this is here on page, well, the Rotzui is on one page and the Shuv is on another page, even though it's a set that comes together. So Rotzui is on page 61 and Shuv is on page 62. Rotzui and Shuv, this is definitely one of the major Hasidic terms. When I'll give out the sheets with all the Hasidic terms, you'll see it there as well. And Ratzon Shuv, actually the origin of these words are from Tanakh, where it says the angels were running back and forth, Ratzon Shuv. But what it's referring to is, where Chassidus explains it, the angels are running forward, meaning they're running towards Hashem. They're running towards to connect to Hashem. But then they realize that if they get too close, they're going to be destroyed, because Hashem is so overwhelming. So they have to pull back, and there's a constant back and forth going on. In fact, there's Chassidus that to a certain extent, this is the rhythm of the entire creation. Rotzui and Shuv. The fact that in the body there is inhaling and exhaling, there's the heartbeat, there's the pulse beat. All this is sort of a manifestation of the rhythm of creation, which is Rotzui and Shuv. All the worlds, everything in the spiritual realm, they're all rising to become closer to Hashem. But then when they realize if you get too close, you become included in Hashem and you lose your identity and you're no longer there, Hashem doesn't want that, you pull back. So for a person, there's also Rosh Hashanah, meaning a person is davening and he's overcome with love for Hashem, and he has to know that love for Hashem, if he takes it to a point where it's beyond any kind of limitation, then what would happen? Like what happened to the sons of Aaron, that they had so much love for Hashem to the point that they passed out and they died. And in fact, there's a famous story brought down in the Gemara that there were 4 tzaddikim, and they all entered the Pardes. The word Pardes means an orchard, but it's a metaphor for entering the deep secrets of Torah, and not everybody was ready for it. So one of them went and he actually died. One of them lost his mind. One of them lost his emunah in Hashem and became non-observant. And the 4th one, who was Rabbi Akiva, he went in, he came out, he was perfect and complete. And what was it? It means it was a rotzui without a shuv. They went into a very deep, high level of connection to Hashem, but they weren't able to handle it, so it broke them. Similarly, this is what happened in the world of Tohu. The light in the world of Tohu is actually, as I said before, Kedusha. So that was drawn to Hashem, to be included in Hashem. And what happened with that light is the same thing that happened with the 2 sons of Aaron, that the light wanted to connect to its source, which is the infinite light of Hashem, to the point it connected, but as a result of that, the vessel broke. When the neshama, God forbid, leaves the body, then the body breaks. That's what happened. So what's the reason for that? How come in the world of Tikkun it doesn't happen? In the world of Tikkun, there's also Kedusha, and the light of the spheres is all about Hashem and everything about Hashem, and yet it doesn't break. And in the world of Tohu, it went overboard. Well, the same you would ask a question about tzaddikim. How could it be that one tzaddik did it right, and the other one lost it? But like, what happened? What's the difference? So again, on a very, very fine, subtle level, not, God forbid, in a coarse way, the way we understand it, is the difference between bittul and yesh. In other words, when a person is overcome with love for Hashem, there's a passion, there's a fire, there's a craving, there's a yearning that's beyond anything we can imagine, and they would just want one thing, just to become one with Hashem. And that's all they want. That's what gives them pleasure. Nothing else in the world matters to them. But the inyan is that there's 2 pleasures. There's the pleasure that I get from doing that avodah, and it's the pleasure that Hashem gets from doing that avodah. From my end, the more I get closer, that gives me the most pleasure. From Hashem's end, he says that I want you to be down here in the body doing Torah mitzvahs. So even though from the tzaddik's end, totally letting go and totally immersing myself and becoming included in Hashem is the greatest pleasure they could possibly experience, but that's my pleasure, but it's not really Hashem's pleasure. So to a certain extent, my pleasure is overriding Hashem's pleasure. Again, on a very, very fine level. Yeah.
So is that the reason why, like if somebody's giving from a place of yesh, they could experience burnout, right?
They could what?
Experience burnout.
Experience burnout.
But like if they're giving from a place of bittul, it's not.
Right, right. In fact, we'll learn later how Yeshus is really the source of everything. Anything that goes wrong, we blame it on Yeshus. That's where it's all coming from. So therefore, it means that when there's when you think of it, the question is this: which of the two directions demonstrate more bittul? When the neshama is drawn towards Hashem, or when the neshama withdraws from Hashem to be contained in its container, whether it's up there or down here. On the surface, I would think what? On the surface, which is more bittul, which displays more bittul. Going towards Hashem, that's more bittul. To be in the body and be in a vessel, in a container, and it means going back to yourself. And the other one means losing myself completely to Hashem. But in a deeper level, no. Coming back, that has more bittul than connecting. Because when I'm connecting, it's my pleasure. And when I'm coming back, this is what Hashem's pleasure. So I'm allowing Hashem's pleasure to override my pleasure. In the other case, it's my pleasure overriding Hashem's. And of course, if they're tzaddikim, all they want is really Hashem's pleasure. Your light is shining. I'm talking about your iPhone. Yeah. Right. So let's not think of this chas v'shalom that the spirits of Torah, these great tzaddikim, or yesh the way we know yesh. We're talking on the finest level, if you can, the microscopic kind of yesh. That's what we're talking about. But nevertheless, from that microscopic yesh up there, it evolves, and from that, what evolves? The yesh, the way we know it down here. That's what he's saying, that the things that come from the world of Tohu, by definition, it's all yesh, because that's what Tohu was all about in the first place. That's why it all happened, was all because of yesh. So let's look at the words inside. So we are on page 61. Hainu kidu, as it's known, shebchinas rotzui, that the mode of rotzu, which means being drawn towards Hashem, craving and passion and the desire to become included in Hashem, nevertheless, einay bittul amiti. Kiyim hergishatze, it's more feeling myself. It's my pleasure. V'ikra bittul, what expresses true bittul is b'chinas shuv. The opposite direction of moving back and withdrawing and being contained. This was not present by the spheres of Toyu, because they had yeshus on their, like I said, macroscopic level. And that's also the reason why they were separate. One didn't include the other. So you have the two reasons which seem to be separate, but they're really all the same. It's all based on yeshus. Because of yeshus, the spheres didn't include each other. Each sphere only was passionate about its own sort of direction, which is either chesed or gvura or one of the other ones. And the second reason is that they became included in their source, and that's what caused the breakage. was also because of Yeshus. Had they had the ultimate perfect bittul, they would have allowed Hashem's pleasure to override theirs. That's the world of Tohu. Hashem came with spheres the tikkun. Let's turn the page. So this term, by the way, is also, we'll see it in the terms, is a very common Hasidic term, separate branches. That's the term used in the Zohar whenever he talks about klipa. That is like, it's like a tree that even though they're all branches from the same trunk, they all come from the same tree. But if you look at the branches, they're all going in different directions. They're separate one from the other. In fact, this is one of the things we learn about Sukkot. What's so unique about Arava, it's one of the 4 species that we use for the lulav, that it's a willow tree. When you look at the branches of willow tree, they grow different than ordinary branches. The Gemara says they grow in unity. The branches of willow tree all lie one on top of each other, rather than spreading out in different directions. Mashain came the spheres the tikkun, but the spheres of tikkun in the world of Atzilus, the b'chinas bittul, v'lachin ikra b'chinas shuv. So therefore, because they're bittul, therefore they're mainly in the mode of shuv, which means to withdraw and be contained in whatever they need to be contained in. This is the fact that the light is settled, not chaotic. It became so common in Hasidic circles, the language became, when someone does something that's wild, they'll say, that's Tovic. And if someone does something that's done in a balanced way, that's tikkun. That's the language we use. The famous Sikha, where the Rebbe said, I did everything I can, I'm giving it over to you. In that Sikha, he used the term, he says, go out and spread the message about Mashiach. And then he said, with the lights of Tohu, but in the vessels of Tikkun. Once you understand this, you can understand what that means. In other words, the energy behind spreading the message should be as intense as it is in the world of Tohu. It means it should be a message that will shake up the whole world. I remember originally when the Rebbe came out with speaking about Mashiach, and the Rebbe was very upset that people are not talking enough about it and not publicizing enough about it. So there's a certain organization, I actually heard it from the head of the organization in Israel, that he wrote the Rebbe a plan that he has to publicize it, and he wrote about the project that he's going to do. And the Rebbe writes back to him, I'm talking about a global explosion, and you're talking to me about a drop coming out of a baby dropper. You know how you give baby droppers a vitamin, a medicine, a little dropper? That's what you're giving me. And I'm talking about something that's going to shake like a tsunami on a global level, shaking up the whole world regarding the message that Mashiach is coming. Meaning it has to be in a way that on one hand, people will be having raised eyebrows. Could it really be? Is this really true? On the other hand, to present it in a way that's going to be totally balanced and capable of tikkun that people could relate to. So from Shviras HaKelim, from the original source, what evolved? That down here, the Sitra Achra, and Sitra Achra is really Yesh. It's all about me and myself, almost like it's not just that my love for Hashem, that I personally get pleasure, will override Hashem's love. It's real Yeshus, it's all about me more than it is about Hashem. Now we've finished the parentheses. So v'zehu. So we're on page 64 here. V'zehu sibas hapiru. So going back to the original, this is the cause for the separation of Heichaltzu. Now he's again summarizing. Ze'enyin klipas midyan. So this is the klip of midyan. Modern v'hariv. So this is modern hariv. This is strife and this is contention. And sinas chinam. This is baseless hate. Ve'ish l'reyu. Gam shlei osaloi shum ra klal. the other person did nothing wrong, didn't hurt me in any way. Didn't touch any of thing that belongs to me. Not anything, not even half a thing. In other words, did nothing. Not only he didn't do anything, he's not even thinking of doing something to me. So Tommy was on the bus and he saw this woman and a little boy, whatever, she was screaming at him. She pulled out a strap on the bus and she starts hitting him. And he's crying, I didn't do anything. And she says, but that's because you were thinking of doing something. That's one second. So, okay. So here in this case, he's not hurting him. He never hurt him. He doesn't have anything to do with him. He's not even thinking about anything to do. Actually, Yochel, the Soivle, doesn't tolerate him. He hates him. Actually, Yochel, the Daber, he can't even talk to him. He can't interact with him and work together with him in anything. Even if there's something which is Kedusha, which means let's get this Kedusha thing, make a shear, do something of tzedakah, help a certain family, and let's work together on that. And he can't even do that even though there's such an important thing that needs to be accomplished. The main reason is it's that because of his yeshus, he leaves no room for the other person, and not only that, he doesn't leave room, he's against him. Although he didn't do anything bad to him, Rak is only sort of only terrible thing that he did is that he exists. That's the only problem, that he exists. The mere fact that he exists, it takes away from his yeshus. So he hates him. He can't work together with him. And then the Rebbe Rashab says, unfortunately, we see this. This is over 100 years ago, so I guess nothing's new. In the recent generations, what do we see? All communities, unfortunately. People are constantly having different opinions. Everything, when it comes to communal issues. And especially when it's Kedusha. For example, who should be the Rav, or what the Rav says, or Sheikhet, who should be the one to slaughter the meat. What we should do in the shul, what we shouldn't do in the shul. There's always people, one says yes, the other one says no. They can't get together. Adar. If one person says this, so the other person says the opposite. One person builds something, this one comes and undermines it and destroys it. Is the difference of opinion, and not really differences of opinion. What it really is pure dalvavis, separation of hearts. The fact that he says the opposite of the other person, it's not really because my mind dictates to me that what that person said is wrong. The real reason is he wants it to say the opposite. Not because the logic is dictating. So why does he want that? This is sort of his principle. Whatever this guy says, I have to do the opposite. And this comes from period levavis, separation of hearts. People can't tolerate one another, and therefore the people are against one another. And the biggest and most painful part of the whole thing is that whatever it is, the communal issue, which is so important, which is so urgent, and would make such a huge difference for the good, it's going to fall apart because people are fighting, and what needs to be done won't be done. They don't look at that. He's just thinking about himself. And I guess that's what one of the things we'll learn about is how it's not so black and white. In the Maimer, it's black and white. But in personal life, it's not black and white. Because everybody's fighting for Hashem. No, the reason why I'm fighting is not because of Yeshus. This is really, I believe this is what Hashem wants. If it's a chassid, he's going to say, I believe this is for sure what the Rebbe wants in the community. What are the signs that the fight is not coming from a good place is if as a result of that, the project falls apart, that's a sign that's not coming from a good place. You might compare this to the story with Shlomo Melech, the story in Tanakh that there were two women, they gave birth, and one of the babies died, and one of the women got up in the middle of the night and switched babies. Her dead baby she put by a friend, and she took the friend's live baby. And she woke up in the morning and she recognized that this is not her baby. And they went to Shlomo Melech, they should judge them. This woman says, this is my baby is the one that's live and hers is the one that's not. And the other woman says, no, my baby is the one that's live and this one not. And what happened? Shlomo Melech said, bring me a sword. I'll cut the baby in half. And you each will get a half. So one woman started to scream, no, 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 give her to have the baby, don't touch the baby. And the other woman said, no, that's justice, that's the way it should be. So Shlomo Melech said, okay, now we know who the real mother is, and she takes the baby. So it says, everyone saw the wisdom. Obviously, it's a story that has a lot of wisdom to it. And I think one of the things is this, if a person's ready to sort of destroy the baby, so it should be my way, what did she want? She wanted that the other woman shouldn't have a live baby when she doesn't have. That's all. That was this jealousy. And therefore, she was ready to destroy the life of a baby, so she should be she wouldn't feel inferior to the other woman. That's the ultimate of Yeshus. So I guess we have to ask ourselves sometimes, if I get into something, will something good fall apart because of it? Then that means that I'm allowing my Yeshus to get in the way. Okay, to be continued. Yeah.
The original spheros in Tohu, they are like entities or angels. What are they? Do they think? Do they have free choice? Just never could figure that one out.
They definitely don't have free choice. No, only humans have free choice. But it's sort of an entity, yeah. It's more than an angel, but I don't know how to describe it. But it's definitely an entity. And I guess the closest thing we can think of is an angel, because it's not a physical entity, and yet it's an entity. Yeah, there's intelligence, I guess. Yeah.
That's what you can see.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.